Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed.
And that actually brought to mind something that we were talking about earlier in your journey when it comes to how people often want you to conform and go the path of the majority as opposed to carving your own path. What it reminds me of is we know we all have our own little, quirky habits and things that we're into. And to the point that you just made, sometimes it's those quirky habits that some people are quote unquote ashamed of that will allow you to connect with somebody that other people are like, yo, how did you connect with them? Oh, well, it's like, yo, we both love comics, or like we both are into, I don't know, knitting. Like who would have thought? Like this famous person is into knitting, but I like knitting, you like knitting. Let's knit together. Like that's the most random example. But it's those things that people would never even think would be able to connect you to another person. And I just wanted to highlight that to let people know, like, don't be afraid to show those sides of yourself that may not connect directly with your business or your profession, because you never know who also has that same passion, that same hobby, that same interest. And it could be that bridge to opening up a relationship that you never would have been able to cultivate otherwise.
Exactly. And also, like, try to be nice to people, because you never know. You should be like this without expecting something from them. Like that should be like the base thing. It's like, just try to be nice. At least if you're not interested in that person, try to be nice, try to push them a bit for don't ruin their dreams and so on.
Right.
If they're really bad at it, you can give them like feedback. It's like, look, man, maybe, design is not for you. You should try something else. But try to be nice to people, because you never know where they might end up being. Mm-hmm. Like I have tons of examples where when I was in high school with bullies and stuff, people were like, oh yeah, he's a dumbass. He will not be anything. And now he's very successful. And people are like, oh, I know that guy. It's like, no, you don't know that guy. You're making fun of him. Like now it's like, yeah, fair enough. You can say you know him, but it's like, try to be nice to people and kind to people, because you never know where they might end up and how they might end up in, helping you in return, because you've been nice to them when nobody was paying attention to them.
That's real. And it reminds me of, and this is going to show a part of my little quirky side. So earlier this year on Netflix, I randomly came across like Korean dramas, and I came across one Korean drama that is now my favorite. It's called Itaewon Class, and it's very similar to what you just mentioned. There's a character in the show who is assisting the main character in getting his revenge, right? Becoming successful. But that person was bullied by the person that the main character is trying to get revenge on. And while the main character, he went to prison, he did all of this other stuff, this other person, they went to university, they went into banking, they invested, like we were talking about before, and became wealthy. And he was able to bankroll all of this other guy's endeavors because of the fact that he was bullied by the same person, and they had a like mission in mind where they connected. He looked out for him when he was bullied. He stood up for him. He fought for him, and he never forgot that. So he remembered that, hey, I want to get my revenge too. So he utilized his skills to do what? Help this other guy become successful. And that's what it really reminds me of, is when you see people who treat people wrong, you never know who it'll be. And at the end, not to spoil it, but it is kind of a spoiler, when that person the revenge had happened, that person came and met him, and they didn't even remember that they had bullied him. They didn't even remember him. And he was like, yo, I was that person that you bullied. And it was through that experience that led me to help this other guy that ultimately put you in the position that you're in now. And it's one of those things where you never know. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because we talk so much about the importance of relationships and cultivating them, but also just treating people right in general is vitally important.
Yeah, that's like, for me, that's one of the most important. Like, so when I first came to London, I came with a carry-on bag and 1,000 pounds in my pocket. So that was it. And I had 1 month to find a job. So you can imagine the pressure that I was like going through, because I was like, either I make it, either I'm out of here. So it's like, it's literally a make it or break it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So after applying to 250 jobs, getting my first job and working there for a year, afterwards, I decided to open my kind of like my company and start contracting. Like, it's kind of like a consulting, it's contracting. I presume you have that in the States as well, like contracting, right?
Contractors and consultants.
Yeah, so I started contracting. And what I wanted to say is that since I started that, because I kind of like, I was, as I'm real with you now, I was real with everyone. Every single client that I had recommended me more and more work.
Wow.
So literally, like I applied to Virgin Startup because I was trying to grow my business and take this to a bigger level.
Yes.
And they were like, "What's your marketing strategy?" And I was like, "Damn, I don't have one." I was like, "How come you don't have?" I was like, literally all the projects that I had from the previous 5 years were through word of mouth.
Wow.
Clients recommended me. So I never had to look for like contracts or projects. It was literally something natural. So yeah, that's why that's what I wanted to say, that you have to cultivate those relationships and be nice to people, because in the end, they might help you out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Word of mouth is huge. I know when I look at some of the clients that I've had the most, I guess, prolonged success with, recurring clients who I get to work with on an ongoing basis, many of them have recommended me to other people. And it's truly a blessing. It really is, because I never would have known that their best buddy or their cousin or their friend or their coworker was in need of that work. We might have never even crossed paths. But because I was connected with this individual, did great work, they recommended me, and it opened the doors to a lot of really cool projects. And I can definitely attest to what you're saying. And relationships, cultivating them and treating people right, in addition to providing them with a valuable service, is definitely the way to go in business. And I want to go back to the transition that you made from being a contractor into starting your own agency. What was the catalyst for that? What made you say, hey, I can go out and do this on my own?
Well, the catalyst was that I had more projects than I could handle. So I was like, I need to find a way to scale this. So I was like, what can I do? So, okay, I need to hire people. So that's how I kind of like dibbled around and started to think about opening an agency. The thing is that what I did not know, is that when you go from a contractor to an agency, it's completely different, because people wanted to work with me. So they were like, no, I want to work with you, Dennis, because I know you're doing a good job. So when I was telling them, it's like, look, now I have a team that they can take care of this, they were like a bit reluctant. Okay. But because so some of the clients that I had previously, they said like, no, I don't, either I work with you. So I had to take the projects myself. Either they were like, you know what, it's like, maybe I'm going to find someone else and so on. So that's an interesting thing that I found out when trying to grow this agency. Right. So, but yeah, if you had like, because of the relationships that I have with the previous like clients and so on, most of them stayed with me. And now slowly I started like generating new clients and generating new projects and so on. But yeah, the transition was not as smooth and as straightforward as I thought. Because I was like, oh, it's simple. I have projects. It's like, yeah, I can hire people. But again, I was honest with those people. If you're not honest, maybe it can work out. But sooner or later, if you grow, they will know. So they're going to be like, okay, fine. I haven't seen you in a while. So it was like, well, where are you? It was like, why aren't you in the meetings with the developers and stuff like that? So yeah.
And that's something that I don't think most people take into consideration, right? Is because your clients do become accustomed to working with you directly. And especially when you're talking about like design, it's not something that is easily passed off to another person, from the perspective of the client, at least, right? Maybe not so much from the perspective of the designer. You like, hey, I do great work. The people I hire and people on my team, they do great work. You're going to get an amazing final product, right? The deliverable is going to be on par with what you desire. But from the client's perspective, they're like, yo, I know what Dennis has proven and shown me that he can do. And it's almost like a trust thing where they're like, okay, do I trust you enough to put my work in the hands of somebody else that you're recommending? And I think that goes again once to relationships as well. What you mentioned, being honest and open and upfront with the people that you're working with and letting them know, hey, it's not just me. I have a team now, and there are some elements, if not the entire project that you're sending over, will be deferred to somebody else. And letting them know that up front allows them to make the decision. And even, as you mentioned, some clients will request, hey, I prefer you to take on this specific project.
Yeah, because most of the projects that I had when I was a contractor, even now, I really care about solving problems, because I think like one of the biggest keys to be a successful UX UI designer is to actually care about solving a problem and helping those people. So I always, like with my clients, I was like, okay, let's see what your problem is and let's see how we can fix it and how I can bring value to you. So I think like that was the thing where they were afraid, because they were like, oh my God, but it's like, what if he's not going to take care of me as he used to? Right. What will happen then? So I think like that was the main thing. But then afterwards they saw that, okay, I still am overseeing the project. I still want to make sure that everything goes well and everything is fine. It's just that I'm not going to do the actual work.
Right.
So yeah.
I'm curious, were there any other challenges that you encountered or that you feel like other aspiring entrepreneurs who may want to start an agency as well, that they may encounter or they should prepare themselves for?
So it's a very competitive field. So what I've discovered is that it's very competitive, and the amount of work that you need to put in, it's huge. So you might say that, oh, maybe it's not worth it. Oh yeah, and the other thing is that it's very hard to scale, just because, based on my experience, not many people are willing to invest in a service business. So because you're doing service, everyone wants now a product. So everyone wants to invest in product because it's easy to scale. Okay, you invest 100K and you can sell it to 1 million people. That's job done. But when you're having services, you need to work for every single project. So because of that, I had a very hard time finding investors, and I ended up evolving is working more, producing more so I can hire people, and then afterwards get new projects and so on. So I had to work a lot more to do that than, for example, me going contracting. So the transition, it's not easy, or at least it was not easy for me. It was a bit hard in this field. Probably you can get around with it if you have specialized kind of like niches, like now to get into AR or VR or do something different. But in terms of like strictly UX UI, it's a bit, because my agency specializes in creating digital products. So that's why it was a bit hard. And also the fact that now bigger companies that I was initially targeting, they started creating their internal team that takes care of their products. So that's another thing to consider when you want to do like a strictly UX UI design kind of like company.
Wow. Yo, I'm so glad you shared that, because it gives people who are considering getting into the field or already in that field, but thinking about branching out and starting their own agency, letting them know up front, what are some of those things that you may encounter that you got to prepare yourself for. And that is on point, man. I really appreciate you for sharing that. And with that in mind, I got to ask you this question, man. What would you say are some of the tools that help you to perform the jobs that you do, that you kind of rely on a daily basis?
So in terms of actually like tools that I use in terms of designing?
Yes.
So I think like one of the biggest changes and shifts was when Figma came in. So if you go into UX UI design, you have like three main tools. The Freenity, you can call it. Right? You have Adobe XD, Sketch, and Figma. And Figma now, they are the new kid on the block, like on the block. They're the new ones. So they came in. Everyone was like, oh yeah, they're gonna get crushed by Adobe. It's like, oh, they're gonna be. But the thing, they came in with a mentality that they said like, okay, designers collaborate a lot with front-end developers. So the way we're going to do it is like, we're going to make this tool for them in such a way that will be a lot easier for them to translate these designs to front-end development. Because the process is like this. You talk about the business, right? We sit down, we sketch it down, and then afterwards we decide what product we want. Okay. Then afterwards the UX UI designer kicks in. And he's like, okay, this is how the page will look like. This is where we're going to put the subscription form. This is the pop-up that will show when people will land on the page and so on. So that's the first step. Create the designs. And then afterwards, after you created the designs, you're like, okay, now I need to build it. So you need to go to the developers. So the developers take those designs and transform it into what you see on your screen. So pretty much that's the life cycle.
Okay.
Like Sketch was okay, but Adobe was like bad at this. But the thing was, the collaboration and the translation between those designs and the final product was very hard. So you had to use like either plugins, either other tools to do that, either you had like issues and so on. And this is what Figma did. So they made this collaboration between the designer and the developer a lot easier. And not only that, it helped me and my team develop products a lot easier because they added like constraints. So in the sense that you design only once and you say like, okay, I want this logo to stick to the left side and this logo to the right side. And then afterwards you can just like modify it and it will automatically layer itself out.
Wow.
Because back with the tools that I was using, you had to, this is the desktop version. Then afterwards, I'm going to convert this to the, tablet and mobile. And you had to redesign those elements. But here you just put the constraints, just drag and drop it. And it's exactly how it works when you start developing it as well. So in terms of like front-end developers, they will be like, oh yeah, this is the normal thing. It's like, that's how we do it. So I think that's where they won the game. I actually made a video about that. It was like, stop using Adobe XD. It's a bit of a runt. But yeah, it's like, to me, from a business perspective and profitability, it helped me a lot because I can design faster and I can iterate faster than I used to, with other products. So I think that was, in terms of design, that will be one of the major tools that, it's like an aha moment when you use it. It's like, oh my God, I should have used this like long time before. So,
Man, it's amazing that tools like that are available to help not only the design process, but really connect all of the pieces of the puzzle throughout the entire process of a project. And that's important because sometimes, like you mentioned, you'll have somebody working over here, you have another person working over there, but then the synergy between those groups is up in the air. And it sounds like now that's not the case. Like you have the ability to not just simplify the process for each team, but allow them to communicate throughout the process as well.
Yeah, and also collaborating with, stakeholders and so on. You can put like comments and stuff like that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Why We Succeed. If you value relationships and believe they are the true key to success, be sure to subscribe. To watch this full discussion and gain access to exclusive content, join our Patreon today. The link is in the description. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next episode.